You're drinking coffee. So we got Frank, we got Brian.
Yeah. All right.
Frank, Tim.
Tonight on the Back to the Future livecast, we have all kinds of crazy stuff that's been going on today. Max 2 going off of Intel and just, I don't know. I think people are just losing their friggin' minds. Tonight on the Back to the Future livecast. And Ecamm still can't do the whole easy switch over to something that is a gradual transition. I don't know if I can't get this. If Ecamm can't get their act together, I may have to switch back to OBS, even though I'll lose like comments and stuff, which wouldn't make me happy. But anyway, welcome to the Mac to the Future livecast here live on Facebook. Hopefully audio won't be a problem tonight. I still am working on it. It's not, I don't know if it's a problem with Ecamm Live or if it's a problem with how it deals with some of the Rogue Amoeba stuff that I use to do this. I don't even want to think about it right now. What I want to think about is the stuff we have to talk about. And of course, as usual, I have Mr. Warren Sklar. How are you this evening, sir?
Hey, how you doing? I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Now, you're back from your vacation out west. I actually put in the show notes last week that you were in Las Vegas, which was a complete and utter lie.
That was a lie. I listened to your podcast, and I'm like,
I wasn't in Vegas.
I wish I was in Vegas. No, California.
Yeah. Well,
And,
Las Vegas, California, same thing.
I went to the mothership and got a shirt. See? I went to the mothership, and all I got is a stupid shirt.
Oh, that's kind of a cool shirt. Show that again. Stand up again.
It's a cool shirt. I like this one.
I like that.
Yeah, I got a few of them. Yeah, no, it was good. Good trip. No. Yeah, no, so that was good. And, I was back last week, but half back because,
as compared to a quarterback or a fullback.
Yeah, time zones and all that
and
crazy stuff.
Football stuff.
Yeah. Football stuff.
Real quick.
So hello to everybody in there. And, hi to all the Russian.
How many people do we have over there? We've got, Frank and Brian and Tim. There are some who call him Tim. So if you guys, I don't know if you guys know about this or not. I haven't really been pushing it. I'm doing a little vlog 2-3 times a week called Guys Daily Drive. You can find that over there on Facebook. I may or may not also turn that into an audio podcast. It's, the audio part of it is really easy. I just need to do what I have to do to try to figure out the how to host it and all the rest of that. I could also do that at mymac.com, but I need to learn how to do these things myself, Warren. Tim has been holding my hand for all these years with the MyMac podcast. I haven't had to worry about it. Is that a gray hair?
Yeah, no, I had a piece of hair sticking out. Yeah, no, I saw that. He's putting some of that stuff on the MyMac site.
Yeah, well, I basically just took links from YouTube and threw them in for all of last week, and I'm not going to do an entire page over at mymac.com for every single Guy's Daily Drive. I think that would really be pushing my luck. But like maybe a once a week thing where I kind of do that, where I just put them all together and Just put it in there like that.
I try, I did do one of them, but it's a video, so I told you this before.
Kind of hard to watch it while you're driving.
So I'm driving, but also with, with Facebook video, even YouTube or Facebook video, if you pause it or if you turn off the screen, it turns off the sound. So, I would love to just listen to it.
Right.
But you would have to take the video, convert it to audio, and I don't feel like doing all that. So.
Well, that's why I was thinking about just, putting it out as an audio thing as well. Because these are only like 10 to 15 minute little mini episodes, and it's mostly just me rambling as compared to what I'm doing right now, where I'm so laser focused.
Anyways,
two things before we get started on the stuff that we're going to talk about. Hey, sup, Ammon? Sup, dudes?
We're still having problems on the Mac to the Future page. It still comes up as unavailable. So
okay, well, anyone just tell them to refresh the page, and I think that worked last week. For
refresh page
that people weren't able to see it. If you'd like to support some of the things that I'm doing, I have a Patreon page. You can look that up over there at patreon.com, Guy Searle. I also have a Ko-fi page, ko-fi.com. You can find me there under Mac Parrot. And any and all monies will go into future endeavors of one type or another, because I just provide all this entertainment every single week. Wow. Yeah, going to bowling and drinking coffee. Yeah, that's kind of what I talk about a lot. And you know what? I forgot I can do this. Here we go.
That's what
going to bowling and drinking coffee.
That's what this show is about.
That is exactly what this show is about. But actually, we do have a topic this week. There was an article over in Bloomberg saying that Apple is planning to move from Intel to their own Mac chips. And, of course, they're talking about the ARM chips that Apple develops for iOS starting in 2020. Now, Bloomberg is claiming that Apple is getting ready to drop Intel as the supplier of processors for Macs and instead use their own designed ARM-based processors instead, beginning in the year 2020. Intel stock dropped over 9% when the story was announced. They say it's a big blow to Intel, but since Apple is sitting at around 12% of the worldwide marketplace for desktop OS, it's hard to see where this big blow is coming from. Probably like a loss of prestige, but certainly not a disaster. And, some of the things, I don't know who wrote this for Bloomberg, but some of the things that they assumed just made me laugh. They were saying that this would make it easier for Apple to release new hardware, new Macs, if it was based on their own chips instead of Intel's. And I was like, since when has Apple released new Macintosh computers on Intel's schedule of new chips? Intel releases new chips. Apple usually spends like 6 months to a year trying them out before they release them to the general population of the Mac buying public. So, saying that Apple is waiting on Intel to release new chips before they release new Macs is nonsense. I mean, we've been looking at static Macs since 2014 for the Mac Mini, and the Mac Pro hasn't really been updated after its release in 2013. And on the flip side of that, iMacs and Mac laptops have seen a steady stream of updates, and none that I know of are based on Intel hardware. Warren?
Yeah. So, it sounds like what it's been like is basically they release next generation of the chip, and then I would say Apple's going to release a new Mac product for the lines that they're still updating about a year or two later than that chip comes out.
Right.
So generally when a new chip is released, you'll see it in a Dell or HPs, and then they'll start trickling in at that point, and then, they'll put a new chip in there. The differences with the iPhones is obviously they make their chip on the iPhones, right?
They designed them.
They design them. I don't know who makes it.
Well, it's a variety of companies.
Okay.
Apple kind of like, and you could say the same thing about AMD. AMD doesn't actually create, fabricate their own chips anymore. They no longer have any fabs. They sold off all their fabs. They now basically just design their x86 based chips, and then they get somebody else to manufacture them for them. This is what Apple does as well with the ARM based stuff.
So they're not thinking about designing their own chip or making their own chip. Maybe
well,
they're
they design
looking to,
but they don't make them.
Make them. So we don't know if they're going to make them or design them or what they're doing in 2020. Anyways, the point is going back to with the iPhones, they're pretty aggressive with putting the fastest chip as soon as they can in the iPhones, because it's their hot seller.
Right.
So, that's a good sign. If they do have control or more control over the chip itself, maybe they'll get more aggressive and they'll have a better mechanism to stick that new chip in Macs every year. Every time that they want to show it off, I think is what they do, and that's what they want to do with the iPhone. But but the thing is that the problem is the Mac line doesn't change as much as the iPhone line, and people.
I don't know if I agree. I mean, if you prior to Steve Jobs' death, you could count on new iMacs, new Mac Minis, new laptops every single year, all the way across the line. There was like a steady update schedule for all of these machines. And then starting probably 2011, 2012, right after Jobs died, that kind of slowed down because, this also corresponded to changes that Intel did because prior to 2010, 2011, basically their hottest selling chip was the Core 2 Duos. And then once the i5s and the i7s came out, which were more multi-core, because Intel can't really make the chips any faster. They've hit a brick wall. There's a famous theorem, and I can't think of who that is. That was saying processor speed was going to double every 18 months. That's pretty much done. We're not seeing big leaps in processing speed. What we're seeing is relatively static processing speed, but more cores. The i9, I think, has 6 cores.
Right. What I said in the Facebook page is my feeling is you're right. Intel's not really making chips that much better than the previous generation. It's always the same thing. They're slightly faster and they run slightly less power hungry, so you get more battery life. It's all about battery life. What Apple and Windows has done, I think more of Windows than Apple, is thin down the operating system to run better on slower hardware. And if you compare, Windows 7 to Windows to Windows 10, 10 will run on pretty much anything like XP will run on.
Sure.
And Mac is doing the same thing too. They're just making it more efficient. So I think even Apple, if they design their own chips, the goal is still going to be a little bit faster and less reliant on battery. Battery is huge. That's one of the
Moore's law. That's what I was trying to remember earlier. Thank you, Brian.
I'm like, you made a finger?
No, that's not the right. It would be a different finger, but no, I wouldn't do that.
But yeah, I mean, I don't think it's. I think it might be a good thing. I think if Apple had more control and wanted to show off their processors and really could do a good design on it, then I'm excited. I think it will actually be a good thing. I think they would actually start releasing more Mac products if they did it.
Well, the problem I see is that when you look at the difference in the architecture between the x86 chips and Apple's ARM chips, I just don't see a way for them to use them for Macs without destroying their current software base. Now, that worked out when they did the switch between PowerPC and Intel, because the benefits of going to Intel over the PowerPC, where you now got compatibility with Windows, especially XP at the time in 2005, 2006, as well as all the Linux based operating systems that were out there. Apple went from being a somewhat limited as far as capabilities for growth goes with the PowerPC to unlimited. I mean, like, we're looking at they've doubled their more than doubled. They probably tripled their market share since they've switched to Intel chips, and I think a lot of that would go away if they did make a switch to ARM chips. I just can't see how emulation is going to give people that want to use Macs and want to use the Mac OS, but still have to run some Windows software, and that's even assuming that they would be able to use the applications, the x86 based applications in Windows with ARM and emulation. I just don't know if that would even be possible.
I'm starting to think that they don't care so much about that.
Well, I don't think it's not so much that they care.
I mean, first of all, boot camp is a big thing, but boot camp's not really been their focus. It's sloppy.
No, you haven't heard anything about it for a long time.
Yeah, it's sloppy. They don't really update it as much. It doesn't work in High Sierra the way it should be working. It's basically, the last thing on their mind is boot camp. And I actually don't think they would blink an eye if they released a processor that only ran Mac OS and all the Mac OS software and nothing else. I think they'd be fine with that. We might not be, and they might lose some people. But, for all we know, maybe it does, when you're getting on the same chip as iOS, maybe you can run iOS along with it, and people like that.
Well, that's the next topic.
That's the next thing.
That's the next topic to talk about. Honestly, I just don't think Apple is ready to replace Intel for ARM on Macs. For example, where does that leave the Pro market? They're talking about later, at some point this year, they're going to release a new Mac Pro. And if they're planning on replacing the entire processor infrastructure for Macs in less than 2 years, then why even bother? Just put all of your resources into creating the best ARM-based Mac that you can, and getting the emulation layer ready so that Intel-based, and it would all have to be 64-bit, Intel-based Mac applications would be able to run under ARM-based Macs. And one thing I don't think they're going to do, and I know some people have talked about this, where they have an x86 processor and an ARM processor in the same machine. I just that's a sloppy way to do it, and I just can't see Apple doing that.
But when they went to Intel from PowerPC, it wasn't a smooth transition either. There was a lot of in between. There's a lot of incompatibilities, and it's going to be the same way. It's not going to be a switch. So
hold on. The difference is, moving to Intel actually made it easier for developers to create software for the Mac. By switching, we're now asking them to switch from the hardware that they know and that they've been using, especially if they develop for both Windows and the Mac, that they've used for the last 10 to 20 years, and now having to go to a RISC-based processor as compared to a CISC-based processor that we have with Intel. You can say what you want about x86, but x86 allows, because it's CISC-based, complex instruction set chip, it allows for quite a bit of God, how to put this, sloppy code. Whereas risk-based, I believe has much tighter tolerances for the code that you want to put in it. Now, on the flip side of that, Apple has spent a lot of time and a lot of resources in developing their own coding language with Swift. So, and Swift works with both iOS and Mac OS. It doesn't really matter which chip you're on when you're coding under Swift. And it's funny I say this like I have any idea what it's like to code under Swift. But there's a reason why Swift has become one of the fastest growing coding languages over the last couple of years. It's supposed to just be phenomenal.
Yep.
So
that's what they're pushing in the schools and all that good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. But I just can't, Apple was paying attention when Microsoft came out with the original Surface, and they had an x86 Surface, and then they also had an ARM Surface.
The ARM one.
And they looked exactly alike.
Yep.
And that confused the marketplace.
But that was, even if it didn't confuse the marketplace, it was never going to succeed because it was based on it was tied down to an app store that wasn't good on the Windows. It had nothing in it. And that's the only thing you could do. So you could get on the internet and get some apps that were out there. So Microsoft, basically tried the same thing, kind of, sort of. They tried to get into the student market about a year ago. And they created something called Windows 10S that did not. And after 6 months, they're like, it's Windows 10S edition or something silly like that. But
it wasn't working.
It wasn't working. So to take over, but it was the same concept as the RT tablet, but you could revert it to a full version of Windows if you wanted to. So. And that failed again because, again, the Windows Store is just not good. And that's why iOS is working. That's why Google works, is there's a store in it. But, again, it's a pretty useless tablet. The ARM was pretty useless because it didn't run anything, which is what you're saying.
So Brian Monroe has a comment here about how about a hybrid chip that could run both x86 and ARM software. They could license x86 from Intel. In the same way they licensed ActiveSync from Microsoft. That might work, Brian, except for one thing. I cannot see Intel cooperating with Apple in any way, shape, or form in relation
knowing they're about to jump ship.
Move. Yeah, they're not going to license x86 technology to a company that's getting ready to stop using their hardware. I just can't see them doing that.
I think virtualization could work. I think virtualization or emulation would work if it was powerful enough. People would do it. I mean, even in the the server world out there, that's what people are doing. Everything's virtualized. So for the developers want to run a copy of Windows. First of all, in 2020, Windows might not even be Windows anymore. Microsoft is talking about changing their whole model to like just a cloud, more or less. So for all we know, it's just going to be a suite of websites or whatever. I don't know.
Where I'm working, they're starting to make the switch from buying Windows licenses to going to Windows and Office and all the
online stuff.
Yeah, SharePoint, everything that we use from Microsoft, getting ready to move that to Office 365, which is basically, and then they're going to rely on Microsoft to hold all of our data, and that's a topic for another day. And
I mean, operating systems are messy, and that's what it comes down to. And I don't think any company wants to be in a business of an operating system at this point. Certainly. Apple if it was up to Apple, everything would just be iOS-like. They don't like the Mac because you could screw it up too much. They just want something where you have apps and so does Windows, and it all works, and you don't have to worry about breaking it. Of course, we the people don't want that, or we the tech people don't want it, but probably half the population does. I mean, they would love to have a Windows computer or a Mac, and they don't care that they don't have to do anything other than say, I want to go on the internet. I want to go on Word. I want to do this. I want to type a document. And that's where it's going.
I mean, we're heading back to where computing was in the early 80s with thin clients, where servers held all the big brains, and you basically just worked off of a dumb terminal. But now the only big difference is instead of line input, it's a GUI input, and bandwidth is to the point where you can get away with that.
Right. So instead of servers, we have the clouds, and because we have the bandwidth to do it, and that's good. I mean, that's why Chromebooks are ruling the schools, because it's possible to do it. I mean, it's possible for them just to get on the internet and go online and not screw up their device. Again, people who like to tinker around with computers or have power, they're going to fight it. But the mass is not. The mass is going just to everything's eventually going to be like an iPad or a Chromebook eventually.
Well, funny you should say that. That is something that we're going to get into right after we take a little break.
There's some comments on there if you want to do that before the break or after the break. But,
Which one?
So Brian says the OS layer is not where the profits are anymore, and it used to be, and that's definitely true. Microsoft and Apple used to make pretty good money on the operating system. Now they all pretty much give them out for free.
Yeah, well, Apple was actually was the first to just give the OS away, because it wasn't where they were making significant money anyway.
No, and I think Microsoft even knew that half of it was pirated anyways, and they stopped caring. So yeah, that's definitely true. Frank says everything's moving to subscription services, which is also true. And yeah, you talked about the 32-bit thing there, the 32-bit apps. Okay, yep, that should be it.
Yeah, and Frank thought we were the big brains.
Ooh, what? I thought you two were the big. What does that even mean?
Frank. He thinks we're smart, or we think we're smart. I guess somebody thinks we're smart.
My mom thinks I'm smart.
Yeah, my mother likes me too. All right, we're gonna take a little break, and when we come back, we have another topic, and we'll see how this one goes. But it's along the same lines. So everybody, hold on, we'll be right back.
Everybody, please stand by. And, we'll be right back.
And welcome everyone back to the mymac.com podcast.
All right, so let's carry on. But
I'm still laughing about something that happened just before we started recording, and we're going to talk about that right now.
I don't know if you heard, Guy, but Sal's going. Did you know that?
Yeah, I heard that. He's leaving Apple. It's a tragedy for everybody.
Oh dear, this is not going well, is it? We are so childish.
We are.
Really are.
It's the G-Men on the mymac.com podcast. Okay, we're back. The big brains are back. So, the next thing, the huge brains good. The next thing I wanted to talk about was something else that I saw. Was that one of the rumors going around is that Apple is getting ready to bring iOS apps to the Mac via a project codenamed Marzipan. As much as I like iOS. I mean, I have an iPad Pro and I've got a iPhone, and all the rest of that. I just can't see how iOS apps, the way that they're structured and the way that they're built to operate, would work well on a Mac.
Yeah. No, we've talked about this a couple of times, and
Yeah.
I have the iPad Pro, and with a keyboard, and I can't think of anything it doesn't do that I want it to do, but I just feel more comfortable in front of a laptop.
This thing from Jason Petefish. I'm his favorite person to listen to while building web pages. And yes, it's because of my big brain. Anyway.
Anyhow, yeah.
Yeah, I don't see the advantage strategically for Apple to bring iOS apps into the Mac. But let's take a step back and let's talk about what we do know. iOS, number one, I have a list here. iOS is Apple's main money maker, and it's not even close. Several Mac models have languished over the years. That's number two. Number three, the Mac OS is getting ready to go to 64-bit exclusively in relation to the apps that it can run. Number four, iOS and the Mac OS, while sharing a common base, the OS X kernel, have completely different user interfaces that would be very difficult to merge with each other. Number five, Google's Chrome OS relies on an always connected relationship to operate and typically doesn't work well as a standalone device, while iOS, certainly while it works better when connected, doesn't need to operate with doesn't need to be online for the majority of their most popular applications to work. Number six, Apple's services, iCloud, Apple Pay, iTunes, Apple Music, and so on, have become Apple's second biggest source of revenue, even more so than the Mac. And again, it's not even really close. Number seven, Apple has already seen what happens when you split a market with entirely different hardware, aka the Microsoft Surface. Number eight, Apple just had a big education event, and where was the Mac in all of that? Basically, it got a classroom app, and it took away iBooks Author, which means you don't need a Mac to publish a book. Mm-hmm. So where does that leave us? I don't think that it leaves us with a merging of iOS and the Mac OS onto an ARM processor. I think the Mac will remain as it has been for the last 10 plus years with no major changes to the architecture.
No, there's no way. And I don't know how long it's going to take, but one day there's going to be a time where we look back and say we can't believe we had something like a desktop computer and a laptop.
Well,
and it's going to happen. And one day it's going to be a iPad-like device, or even I think Windows RT was probably before its time. People weren't ready for that. But I think eventually we are going to have just things, probably just like a screen and like a keyboard, just so we could see what we're doing. And it's just going to be a pretty dumb device that has. Companies don't want you dicking around with the operating system anymore. They just want something that you turn on, it works. You push a button, it works, and that's what they're going to go to. And we're not going to, we're going to laugh at these machines that we had, years from now and say, I can't believe there's, that you could even open them up. You can see what they're doing. They just want these hermetically sealed devices, like that we could just walk around with and have. And
well, it's funny you should say that. What I think is going to happen is that iOS, as time goes on, will get more Mac-like features, but only under certain conditions, like when it's plugged into something to turn it into a desktop. Now, I've talked about.
Yes, that remix. Yeah, don't bring out the remix again. Okay. We know it's a remix.
Okay, it's the Remix Mini,
yes,
Android on a desktop.
Right.
And
But
this is something that I think Apple could do. I think that this would work well. Instead of having a laptop, instead of having even something as big as an iPad that you're always carrying around with you, you've got your iPhone. And when you get to work, you plug it into a dock, and the power that is inherent within that device is now on a big screen, and it's connected to a network for better connectivity. It's connected up to a network for all of the documents and everything else that you need to work on that you use a computer for. And
no, you're thinking in the past. That's archaic already, because everything's going to
I
be
don't
in.
think so.
It is. Everything's going to be in the cloud. It doesn't matter. We don't need to carry around any device with us.
But we already are, unless we have something the size of an AirPod that's in our ear that can operate the same way an iPhone can with glasses or what have you. We're already carrying around a very, very powerful computing device. And the nice thing about carrying around that computing device is that if we actually need to do something and we can't just connect it up to a bigger screen and to a network and all the rest of that, we still have the power of that computer in our hands.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but did you see the movie Her? You ever watch that?
Her?
Yeah, it's called Her. It's the one with the Scarlett Johansson, and it was a guy. It was Jonathan Phoenix. Anyways, it's this futuristic movie where he is walking around with one AirPod. I mean, this was before the AirPods even came out. This a couple of years ago. Walking around with one earpod. It's a virtual assistant, and he could talk to it. It talks back to it, and it works on like Siri. And then basically you just see him kind of walk up to any screen anywhere, and he could, hey Siri. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I knew that was going to happen. Hey, bring up my schedule, and it will just show a screen no matter what you are. And that's kind of what I'm thinking we're going to. Basically a working virtual assistant, that we have, and basically we could walk up to probably any type of screen in the house or in the office, and it will show us what we're talking about. And it will work for multiple people. And
I think we are very far away from something like that. I will be one of those old codgers that are like, in my day, we had to have wired connections for our computers. We'd plug it in and we would do stuff, and that was the way it worked. Without your fancy little glasses and your fancy little earpieces.
Nah, you're living in the past, man. You should see the movie though, because I won't spoil it, but it's a good movie. It's
never mind. I was going to say something very, very inappropriate and stop myself. So okay.
Well, the movie was fairly inappropriate. He falls in love with his virtual. He falls in love with the virtual assistant.
Well, I guess I mean we're 2 years away from these rumors that Apple's going to leave Intel. We're probably much farther away from either having an iPhone as your only computer, or from everyone going to thin clients and all the rest of that.
So enjoy your Macs while you have them.
So you enjoy your Macs while you have them,
and they have Intel chips in there.
Yeah, that could go away at any time. Yeah, Jason Petefish, let the young whippersnappers keep on texting. I prefer talking to people.
Definitely not.
Those damn people.
I'm just as old as all of you, and I hate talking to people.
You are not as old as I am.
How old is Jason? You said
I don't know, but he's got gray in his beard, so I'm thinking he's probably close to my age.
Yeah, but yeah, texting's the way to go. Talking is.
It's overrated. Talking is overrated.
Done.
Actual physical connections with people. Ew.
Talking is so 80s. You can't do it anymore.
Before we wrap it up for the night, I just wanted to mention MacStock 2018. MacStock is in its 4th year. This year the dates are the 21st and 22nd of July, and as usual, it is just outside of Chicago, in Woodstock, Illinois, at the I think it's Luch Conference Center.
The Louvre in Paris?
Leucht. That is how it is spelled on my document.
Honey, we're going to Paris. No, we're going to Chicago.
No, we're going to Woodstock, Illinois. But they filmed Groundhog's Day there.
I heard.
What? Okay. McHenry County College campus, which is in Crystal Lake, Illinois. The conference center is a beautiful auditorium with super comfy chairs, and that's true, and a great sound system. There is literally not a bad seat in the house. Dr. Mac Bob Levitas is giving the keynote speech this year. Tim Robertson from My Mac and Tech Fan Podcast and myself will be doing the My Mac game show. And the whole My Mac game show is being rejiggered for people who saw it last year. It's gonna be really, really different, but still have all the great things that made it so much fun last year. Allison Sheridan from the NosillaCast is going to be there. Wally Chewinski, who is a longtime videographer, and many, many more will all be there giving talks, having a great time. This is going to be 2 days of community, of Mac and Apple community. It's going to be great.
Frank says the only hotel in town is sold out.
Oh no, the Hampton Inn is sold out, but there's many, many other hotels.
I'm just picturing it's the only hotel in that little town. So
No, well, that's
let me have my fun.
The Hampton Inn is like the main hotel that a lot of people are staying at, but there's lots of other places to stay. I've stayed at the Comfort Inn, I think it's called, the last 3 years, and I'm going to the Hampton Inn this year because that's just where the main crew is going to be.
So is that like, if you're not at the Hampton Inn, you're not with the in crowd? It's like, it's like staying at the Circus in Vegas. So you just, you got kicked out to
New York.
New York is good.
Actually, I've never been to Vegas.
What?
No, I've never been to Vegas.
You should go.
I want to. I would love to go to NAB or CES or some of these other,
the CES.
Big,
that's on my list.
Yeah, it's kind of on my bucket list. But the entire cost for the conference for both days, and that includes lunches, that includes food on Friday night, food on Saturday night, and basically whatever hotel you stay in is going to have continental breakfast. Michael Lacey.
Oh. There you go.
$249, and there's nothing else that you, as far as the conference goes, now hotel and transportation and everything else, that's still on you. But $249 is the absolute most that you will pay for attending this conference both days. It's all inclusive. Everything is there. However, you can save some money if you sign up now and get your tickets now. I think the early bird pricing, which got it down to $179, is over. I think it's either $179 or $189 now, but it's still not that much. But you can get another $10 off by using the coupon code MTTF bonus 10, which will bring your total cost down another $10. This is the 4th year for the MacStock Conference and Expo, and every year it's gotten better and better. I'm going to be there. Warren may be there. I don't know. I could be there.
Still waiting for permission.
You have to ask permission. Isn't that adorable? No, I'm kidding. I was just trying to angle a trip down to Florida with my wife, and she was like, "What are you going to go to Florida for?" I was like, "Well, there's this thing." And she's like, "You're not going to spend that kind of money for 3 or 4 days." And it's like, "Yes, dear." And so now I'm not going to Florida.
Yeah, I went to WWDC once, and I think that's it for the rest of my life. So.
Well, I've never been to a WWDC either.
Yeah, no, that was fun. But
okay.
MacStock would have been better. I should have saved up. I should have held out.
It's certainly going to be a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
Than going all the way out to Southern California. Warren, if people wanted to get a hold of you, I guess they could do it via the Mac to the Future site.
Yep.
Over there on the book faces.
Yep. We're 90% Russian hacker free on that page.
Mostly.
Mostly.
That we know of.
That we know. Well, you never know. How about you?
You can find me also over there in Mac to the Future. You can send me an email, guy@mttfgo.com or guy@mymac.com, probably. You can also find me on the Twitters. I am Mac Parrot over there. And we kind of share a Skype number with both the Guys Daily Drive and the mymac.com podcast. That number is 703-436-9501. I need to get like a scroll across the bottom screen as I talk about this, so it'll just bring it up automatically.
Can we call you while you're driving now? While you have the Skype running?
Well, actually, I'm not. It's not done live. I actually do it over I use an iPod Touch to record Guys Daily Drive.
No, right. But while you're driving, we should be able to Skype.
Oh, yeah. Well,
call you.
If you wanted to be really super annoying and just listen to whatever answering message I have on there, sure. Why not?
Oh, so we don't actually talk to a human? This is like a robocall in reverse.
It's totally roboed.
Okay.
Roboed.
This might be why nobody's calling the number.
I know, it is sad.
Just a hunch. Yeah.
You can help support some of the crazy things that I do over on Ko-fi, kofi.com/MacParrot, or you can do that Patreon thing, patreon.com/MacParrot, or look me up by my name, Guy Serle, Serle. All roads lead to Rome. That's how it works.
And I don't need anything, but if you want to send emails to my wife, convince her to let me go to Macstock, I'll take that.
Well, I'm driving. I'm driving to Macstock.
Well, I wouldn't be driving. I'd be flying.
Okay.
I'm not doing.
That's what I do.
I'm so overdrive. I don't drive. We don't do that anymore.
Yeah, I
had a terrible childhood of memories of being in my parents' car with my two brothers, because my family never liked to fly for whatever reason. So we would go to Florida from here, and it was
that's easy, a 2 to 3 day trip.
And this is why we don't do that anymore, because it scarred me for life, pretty much.
Well, and it's certainly a lot easier.
Yes, it's a good flight.
And Jason, you cannot remove the picture of me in a Roman bathhouse. No, once it's there, it's there.
I've seen that picture
forever. What?
Yeah, I've seen it. I did see that.
Anyway,
I saw a picture of Bob Levita like half naked too. Did you see that?
No, I didn't. No, I don't need to talk about that. I have expunged that. I've expunged that from my brain through surgery, and I don't need it back there again. I'm not looking that up. All right, everyone. Thanks. Thanks for watching. And Warren, you got anything else before we head out?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Be good. Everybody be good.
We shall hopefully, unless something really insane happens, we'll see you next week on the Mac to the Future livecast. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, it didn't work.